Please listen carefully.
Well, welcome to Clubmen 1645, and we've spent the whole week in Somerset and Devon filming about the clubmen in this area in the months of June, July, August and September. But we've already touched on a few sites, a couple of sites in Devon and a few sites in Somerset, because there's a vast amount, well not vast, there's a large amount of clubman activity in this area right through, as we said, to September. Because Gorman's forces were still in the county and Devon and being pushed into Cornwall. We've been to Langport, we've been to Bampton, we've been to Triscombe, we've been to Milverton, and I think we're going to pop into the Isle of Abbott on the way back.
Yes. If
the weather stays with us, because we've had rain all week. So the weather hasn't been on side with us, but we've been staying in Taunton as a base, and this is obviously Taunton Castle behind me, which was sieged 3 times. Somerset with the clubmen. Clubmen 1645, and we've come back out to Somerset, and we're in a village called Milverton, and Milverton is in Somerset, but we want to talk about the clubmen in Devon, because on September the 2nd, 1645, clubmen from Bampton, a group of clubmen came into Milverton, this village we are in now, to meet General Massey, and they were asking for his assistance to protect the town of Bampton. And Massey went out with the clubmen back to Bampton and left 60 of his troopers there, and then he came back to Milverton. But yeah, that's why I want to talk about the clubmen really. It's only a small place, Milverton itself, a little village, but this is where Massey's troops were stationed. And as I said, the delegation of clubmen came from Bampton in September the 2nd, 1645, or was it the 3rd? I think it was the 2nd. And as I said, some of his troops, Massey himself, went into Bampton, where he was well received, and he left some troops there. And we've just met the vicar, had a little chat with her, and she does know of the story of Massey's troops here, doesn't know they were stationed, but she said there was a barn to my left, that way, with some open field, and maybe they were stationed there because there was a lot of them. But there you go. So, Milverton, Bampton, Somerset, September 1645. And when we get to Bampton, I shall talk about what happened there on the 29th of September 1645, when Gorman's troops came to the town and played carnage.
Gathered the afternoon into my glass. I got 100 proofs.
1645, Clubmen 1645. And we are on Stony Lane. And Stony Lane leads into Bampton. Now on the 29th of September in 1645, Gorman's troops came down this lane and arrived in Bampton to deal with the Clubmen, which were in Bampton, and some of Massey's troops, because as we mentioned, Milverton on the 2nd of September, the Clubmen went from Bampton to Milverton to ask for Massey's assistance, which he did. He went up to Bampton with his parliamentarians and left 60 troopers there. So we jumped to the 29th of September when Gorman left Tiverton and went into Bampton to deal with those troopers, and he did. And he did with the Clubmen there. It was a bit of a rout, really. Not much resistance, because Bampton at the time was a Clubmen, what would you say, there's a lot of Clubmen activity in this area. There's North Malton, South Malton, Tiverton to some extent, and obviously, as you know, near Bridgewater and Fairfax early on in July. Met with the Clubmen at Knoll Hill. But in Bampton on the 29th of September there was a major altercation, as you could say, with Gorman's troops and Massey's troops, 60 troops and Clubmen. And as I said, there was a bit of a rout. They ran for the church, some of them ran for the church, and some of them were killed, and there was 6 days of plunder, and most of Brook Street was set on fire. You can find all this information out in the local history centre here, because they're excellent. They've got some really good stuff in there. Alas, we've arrived here today and it's shut, but I got a lot of this information off their website, and I found a lot of other information obviously in parliamentary newspapers and a few secondary sources book-wise. But yeah, Bampton in Devon. So we were in Milverton and Somerset, and then we were in Devon now, talking about the Clubmen in September. And Gorman was pretty much doing what he wanted in September, because he wasn't feeling threatened by Fairfax, because Fairfax was dealing with Bristol and had gone back into Dorset to deal with the Clubmen at Sherborne, as we know, with the Dorset Clubmen, because he saw them as more of a threat than chasing Gorman into Devon. So we're going to go back to Taunton later on, do a bit more filming there. There was 3 sieges there, as you know. And Weldon was involved with those sieges. And the funny thing with Weldon was the parliamentarian. It was held in the Taunton Castle. But he was also the fellow that the Clubmen were talking about back in March, when they threatened Lewis Dives, and they said they would join Weldon and Graves if Lewis Dives didn't deal with Gorman in Dorset in March. So there's a bit of a link in there. But yeah, this is Stony Lane, and Sheila's going to pan around and show you where the troops, Gorman's troops, would have come into Bampton that day on the 29th of September 1645, and then we're going to look at Ford Road, where Massey's troops would have arrived on the 2nd of September. So we'll do a little bit of filming around town in Bampton. Pretty little place, isn't it?
It is. No, it's lovely.
Yeah, we can't get in the church today because it's shut. But we had a chat with the guy in the library, and he was quite knowledgeable. And as I said, their history site, their heritage site, is excellent. It's got a whole section about the Clubmen. Just look it up, Bampton Clubmen, 1645, and it's got the whole, well, I've mentioned, and a few other things, I'd imagine. I've mentioned, I didn't know about Stony Lane or Ford Road. Obviously that's local knowledge, where they know which way would have been the old way into town, and that's what I find when you come out to these places. You can find out some additional information which you can't really find if you just look through the National Archives. We come out from Stony Lane, where Gorman's troops arrived on the 29th of September to deal with the Massey's troops and the Clubmen in Bampton, and behind me is Ford Road. Ford Road is where Massey's troops would have come into town, Bampton, to meet the Clubmen back in September the 2nd, 1645, and we're going to go up to the church and show you the church where some of the Clubmen ran to on that day, September the 29th in 1645. Just showed you Ford Road and Stony Lane, and behind me is the church, St Michael All
St Michael and All Angels.
St Michael and All Angels, and some of the clubmen on September the 29th ran for the church. So yeah, the clubmen in Bampton. We've just walked down Brook Street. There's loads of cars down there, so we didn't film anything down there, but it's ever so wide, and it would have been even wider until Gorman burnt all those houses down. And so we're going to wrap it up here at Bampton, and we're going to go back to Taunton, and then we're going to try to find Goosemoor, because then there was a rendezvous at Goosemoor in July of 1645 of some clubmen. So we're going to see if we can find it, because it's mentioned in some parliamentary newspapers, but nobody knows exactly where it is. It's a bit like Gore Hedge Corner, that mysterious place in Dorset. And we've come out to find Goosemoor, and we've been to Halberton, and we've come down this old road called Halberton Road. It was also called Willand Road, isn't it?
Yes.
But Goosemoor, where the clubmen met on the 23rd of July in 1645, is all this area here. This is all Goosemoor. So to actually find the spot where they met would be quite something. But there is a Goosemoor house on my left at the end of this road here, this dead end road here, which runs by the railway line, the old railway line, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Is it a disused railway line now?
I think it's disused, but I'd have to look on the Ordnance Survey
There's a
map.
bridge down there anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're in the middle of nowhere really. So Halberton's nice. If you want to go somewhere, you can stop in there for a little while.
Yep.
But yeah, Goosemoor, 23rd of July, clubmen rendezvous here in 1645, and this is in Devon. And we're probably going to Tiverton after this, because Tiverton's not very far. So yeah, the clubmen in Devon in 1645. See this pan around, and that house right in front of you there is Goosemoor House. I don't think it is actually. I think that's the next door neighbour's house, isn't it?
That's right.
I think
it's the
Goosemoor
neighbour.
House is right next door.
Yeah.
Repeatable pattern, I'll be terrible art. Seasonal hazards, baby, making it hot. There's no way to obey all that's in my heart.
We're in Triscombe, at the top of Triscombe Hill here. We've just walked up from the hill. At the bottom of the hill was an inn. We can park your car and have a hell of a hike up here, or you can drive your car up here and park at the car park. Either choice is yours. But we've been to Bampton and we've been to Milverton, where we talked about the clubmen there, but we've come to Triscombe here because in July the 30th, 1645, this is where the clubmen had a rendezvous, and they talked about reinstating the Uxbridge Peace Treaty and bringing a resolve to the two warring parties, the obviously the Roundheads and the Cavaliers, and they wanted peace through dialogue and not conquest. But we're actually stood by the Triscombe stone sign here, and this is not Grove Road, it's Drove Road, and this is the Triscombe stone, which certifies this is a really ancient walkway.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. It's an ancient monument, apparently.
Ancient monument, apparently. But we're going to walk down the hill now because it's freezing up here today, exceptionally windy, but it's well worth a walk. I bet it's a 20-minute walk from that inn, don't you?
Oh yes.
And
yes.
it's all uphill.
Really steep.
So, you know, it challenges your heart rate. But when we got to the top, there is a car park, so you can obviously drive up here as well. But yeah, Triscombe, on the July the 30th, 1645, the clubmen had a rendezvous here in Somerset.
I was a bronze retriever, asleep at the door, dreaming of other dreamers, tongue on the floor. Let's meet on a lazy river and go with the flow. Take mornings to reconsider.
Well, welcome to Clubmen 1645. We've been to Bampton, Milverton, Triscombe, and now we're in Langport. And we've come into Langport to talk about the Royalist garrison that was run by Francis Mackworth. Now, Francis Mackworth's garrison is said to be in this area here, at the bottom of Bow Street. But his garrison was short on supplies. Gawain wasn't very favourable with the chap, and he wasn't really supplying the garrison. So Francis Mackworth sent some of his troops out into the area to gather supplies. And upon that, they were set upon by the Clubmen. And they captured some of his troops, and they came upon his garrison in Langport and fired their muskets upon the garrison, where Francis Mackworth turned his cavalry upon the Clubmen, and they were routed. But it's an important thing to remember, because later on at the Battle of Langport, where both these streets were on fire down Bow Street, and the Royalists were making their escape from the battlefield, after being routed by Fairfax, the Clubmen came upon some of those troops at the end. So the Clubmen are linked to the start of the Battle of Langport, before the Battle of Langport, and at the end of the Battle of Langport. And there's even a Dorset connection, which we should talk about on Pitney Hill later on, with Fairfax. But yeah, Francis Mackworth, his garrison here in Langport, and the Clubmen. Okay, we just had a little chat about the Royalist garrison in Langport, and that is Bow Street, immediately behind me on this exceedingly busy high street. But yeah, the Royalist garrison was that way. It was that way. We talked about the garrison there with Francis Mackworth, and we're at Pitney Hill, and this road runs right through Pitney Hill. It is actually called Pitney Hill Road, and Pitney Hill was right behind me, and that's where Fairfax's troops were stationed before the Battle of Langport on the 10th of July. But we're here to talk about the Clubmen, and the Clubmen from Dorset, George Horse and a delegation of Clubmen met Fairfax on that hill just before the Battle of Langport, and they do say it was just before the Battle of Langport. And he asked for the troops to be put under his command, and the other Royalist troops to disperse as such, and cease the warfare. And Fairfax disagreed with this, obviously, and had him locked up. But he did escape, and he wasn't held, and he went back to Dorset, obviously, with his brother Thomas Horse in Salisbury. But George Horse and a delegation of Clubmen met Thomas Fairfax on that hill. And after the Battle of Langport, the Somerset Clubmen set upon Gawain's troops, and they were routed through Langport itself. They are Pitney Hill, George Horse, Thomas Fairfax, and the Clubmen of Dorset, and that meeting on Pitney Hill on the 10th of July 1645 in Somerset. Right, we've returned to, well, we haven't returned, we've arrived at Isle Abbots, and on the 9th of July 1645, Lieutenant General George Porter was here with his Royalist troops, and this is the precursor to the Battle of Langport, and they were come upon, and they were surprised by Massey's parliamentarian troops, and they fled across the Isle Moor as such, but the Clubmen set upon them as they were fleeing, and this links back to Mackworth's garrison in Langport, because he was sending out his troops for supplies in the area, and they were plundering the local villages and the local towns in the immediate area, and hence the consequences of that were, when the Royalists were fleeing from here, the Clubmen set upon them. So you know, the Battle of Hearts as such was lost with the Royalists in this area, with Gawain's troops as such, and with Fairfax's arrival with the new model army, it was a bit more professional, and they were playing for their quarter, and they were talking to the Clubmen throughout in Somerset. But the Somerset Clubmen weren't all on the side of the parliamentarians. As we know from Knoll Hill, they were meeting on the 11th of July, just before the Battle of Bridgewater, and I don't know if it's the 11th of July or not, but anyway, near that time, and they were talking to the Clubmen then. They still weren't taking sides as such there, but later on they did. So yeah, our last trip, Isle Abbots, on the 9th of July 1645. You must remember that the Clubmen were the third sort greater in fortune and greater in number. Keep an eye on the Clubmen website, Clubmen 1645, work in progress. Right, welcome back to Clubmen 1645, Line Focus.
You are now. Yeah,
Okay.
straight out foot, and you're all blurry. And I think I've got to get you back in focus. I think I've just got to get you back in focus. And because it's all right, just momentary, but it's not.
Keep still.
Well, you're not when you're not when you're talking. See, you're doing this all the time. Yeah.
Right, take 5. Take 6. Take 7. Right, take 8. Right, welcome to Clubmen 1645. Can you pick me up?
Yes.
Yes? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to shout. Right,
Yeah.
welcome to Clubmen 1645, and we are now in Langport. And we're in Langport because we're going to talk about Frank Hawksworth.
Right. Okay.
Can't remember his name. So keep an eye on the Clubmen website, Clubmen 1645, work in protest, and from
Work in
Somerset.
protest.
Work in protest. Yeah, but watching too much Extinction Rebellion stuff, it's getting into my head.
It is a work in protest.